Okay, Dave Paulides, Can't Have Missing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. And Huck is in the building. The toughest, most demanding executive producer there is. You're a good girl. She was just sleeping in the other room, and I said, come on, get in here. Folks want to see you. She goes, okay, Dad, I will. Yeah, she's a good girl. Oh yeah, I know you've been sleeping. They know you've been sleeping. Thanks for coming in. Okay, folks. Huck is going to hang out, probably give us a couple woofs and listens, but I'm here. So somebody sent me this with no note. But what's inside? Oh, Huck's going to go crazy. This is what's inside. And then there's a bunch of play toys that Huck will just totally rip to shreds. And they sent in a bunch of nice food too. Oh yeah, she's gonna go crazy over this. I can't let her do it now because I'd have to pay attention to what she's doing, and it could be ultra disaster. So thanks a million. Whoever sent that, there was no note or anything, but Huck licked the box when I showed it to her, and she seems interested, so who knows. So again, thank you. A lot of questions lately. People from Germany, Australia, and Austria, and Sweden have asked in the last week, Dave, when are we going to be able to order internationally? All right. We just signed an agreement with a distributor in Canada, just outside of Vancouver, that is going to handle all international shipments anywhere in the world. They're going to ship it from their offices. And I'll be giving you that once we get the green light. We had to ship boxes and boxes and boxes up to them, and they're setting up their website for it. It'll be a pretty easy transition. Anywhere worldwide they'll ship. So this is really good, really good. These would be sales that, to you guys, I feel bad for Australia specifically because I went there and we haven't been shipping there for a while, and them and the UK and Canada are probably our top 3 outside the US customers. But I'm going to try to get these worldwide, and I know it's going to happen now. So hang on to your taters, and I'll get that info out to you as soon as they give me the green light. And then what else is going on? Well, I don't want to complain. I'm gonna steer clear of that because I could spend the next hour complaining, and I'm not going to do it. I just appreciate all the emotional support that you guys have put in your comments. Now, regarding the comments, people asked me about the David Schultz disappearance in Iowa, and they found his body, and I've commented on it incessantly. And the quickest way to get my comments up and to get feedback from you is on Twitter. And a lot of people are really down on Twitter, and I don't understand that. In the old days, I was too. Since Elon Musk took it over, it's a very calm place. And considering who I am, I don't get a lot of hate on there at all. So it's changed. If you go to David Paulides, P-A-U-L-I-D-E-S, David Paulides at Can't Have Missing, that's my Twitter account name. I encourage you to go there. On David's disappearance, I posted 4 things in 4 days, and there were hundreds of responses. A lot of really interesting ones. So probably many of them came from you, but if not, you're going to meet a lot of new friends there because there's a whole lot of supporters. I have 49,000 followers, and many of them are really active on there. So jump on, participate. Today, 2 cases. And the first case is a graduate level case. What I mean by that is that you have to be an elder in the village to maybe grasp how important this is. All of you are villagers. But are you an elder that's been around long enough to be called that? So, here it is. In the old days of reporting news, they never said a child's first name. I don't know why, but they just never did. So in this one, they called it the son of J.A. Pereira, 2 years old. Went missing May 19th, 1902 at noon, just west of Willows, California. Willows is in the San Joaquin Valley, up the middle of the state, north of Sacramento, not quite to Redding and Red Bluff area. So it's in a very hot area. And it's where they grow tons of stuff. Great ground, great weather to grow agriculture. Well, the Pereiras owned a farm, and their youngest was 2 years old. And every day at noon, that was like the family get-together meal. Every family has one, and this one, the Pereiras worked it at noon. Well, as they're sitting around at the table, Mr. Pereira sees that the youngest one isn't sitting anywhere, and he says, "Hey, where's the 2-year-old?" Nobody seemed to know. So he sent the oldest boy out into the yard to find him. Well, after about 5 minutes, he comes back and he says, "I can't find him." So Mr. Pereira says, "Okay, everybody up, let's go out into the farm and search." Well, one of the kids said, "Well, last time I saw him was maybe a half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago. He's by the barn." Well, the barn's right next to the house, so they just went over there and checked it out. No, son wasn't there. And there's fields completely surrounding the house. So everyone's searching, everyone's yelling. Nobody can find him, except right next to the front door are those little boy's shoes. The comment at the time was, that's good news because he's not going to go very far without shoes. Well, they lived in a very rural area of what's called Glenn County, California. Now, the Pereiras got word out into that community that they needed help, and they needed it quick, because the temperatures in May could get very warm, and at night they got very cold. Well, at 4 p.m. that day, they still hadn't found the son, and 50 locals had shown up onto their property saying that they were going to help them search. So they divvied the farm up, and they sent them all out to different areas of the farm to look, walk the fields, call the boy's name, scream the boy's name. And about an hour after dark, about 10, 11 o'clock that night, everyone came back. And there was rumble that the majority thought he had to have been kidnapped, because there's no way they would not have found him at this point. Remember, no shoes. He wasn't responding to any calls. They hadn't found any tracks going through or fields pushed down, nothing like that. So the next day, 200 searchers show up. They arrived at 7 a.m. They were given different areas of the farm by Mr. Pereira, and they all agreed to stay within a 3-mile radius of the farm. And that makes complete sense to any search and rescue worker. Any child 2 to 3 years old would be found 95% of the time within a 2-mile radius on a farm. So he was last seen wearing a tennis flannel dress. Now, don't make fun of him. He's a boy. He's 2 years old. Tennis flannel dress that was red and brown checked. And he had a blue flannel undershirt and no shoes. Searchers came from as far as Chico, St. John, Willows, Orland. There were a lot of people that were concerned, and more people were coming. And at the end of that day, May 20th, nobody could believe that the boy got outside of that 3-mile radius. And they were outwardly saying, this has to be a kidnapping. We're going to keep searching, but I think it's almost time to bring law enforcement in. Well, the next day, May 21st, everyone's still more focused on searching, because if you miss him searching, he's going to die. 500 searchers show up. Now, let me tell you, getting 500 people to get off their working ranches and farms in that area to come out and help speaks for that community. I don't know if we get that today, but everyone helped themselves in those days. They cared about each other. If something happened, they were there to help. I wish our world was that way today. I live in a community right now where nobody lives right next to each other. There's lots of acreage between us and stuff, but I know that if anybody ever needs help, I'm going to go help them. All they have to do is ask, for sure. About a year and a half ago, a guy got his tractor stuck in a ditch, and I happened to be driving by, and I saw him, and he said, "Dave, can you help me?" "Oh, yeah, for sure. What do you need?" And he goes, "You have any rope?" I said, "Yeah, back at the house." And he says, "Maybe you could pull me out." I said, "Yeah." So I drove a couple miles back to the house, got the rope, pulled him out. We're lifelong friends. It's not even, it never crossed my mind not to do it, but you just, to be a good person, you got to do those kind of things. Even if I was in a rush, I wouldn't have cared. You got to help your neighbors. So 500 searchers, and they searched. Well, they started at 7 a.m. They were given these zones, and they went out, and they were still staying within that 3-mile radius, searching areas that had been searched before and pushing out a little further. So at 10 a.m., an employee at a location called the Fennell Ranch was trying to find an area where he could cross Stony Creek with this carriage. And as he goes down near the creek, he looks, and then he looks again. What? There's a small boy playing in the gravel bar. He knows that the community's looking for this little boy, and he walks over to him, and he said the boy only could say one word. He said, "Hello, hello." And he said the boy appeared to be in remarkable condition. So the employee said that he picked up the boy and he took him back 5 miles to his house. Remember, 95% of all search and rescue is within how much? For a two-year-old? 2 miles, that's right. Remember, boy had no shoes on. Articles at the time said that the boy was in exceptionally good condition. And after looking at his condition, they were all 100% convinced he had to have been kidnapped, but didn't know how, and that the kidnapper must have gotten scared and dumped him next to this creek. They tried to talk to the boy, but a 2-year-old's not that communicative. And the searchers all gave an interview to the press, and they said that they didn't believe that that boy could have crossed 5 miles of briars and fields and hills without shoes. The family had no enemies. There were no suspects in the community. There was nobody lingering around anybody's ranch, farm, and the police never got involved. This was all a rural area done by fellow ranchers and farmers. Now, why do I tell you this? Well, first of all, it gives us a timestamp on 1902. This was happening. Now, when you live in a rural area, and these people say, that boy couldn't have crossed these fields in this time frame. He was gone about 46 hours. In this time frame, without shoes. There's just no way. Who are we to question that? I believe it. Now, do I believe it was an abduction? Yeah, but not in the classic human-to-human sense. It's more of the 411 type, right? So, let me show you. Now, this is Willows, California, right here. And this is Interstate 5 that goes all the way from Redding, Red Bluff, up into Oregon, right down the middle of the state, all the way to Los Angeles. Now, this is where the boy was found, and Stony Creek comes out of the mountains right here and flows into this little body of water right there. And he was found playing on the bank of the creek. A couple things found next to water. They didn't track him. They didn't see any tracks to track him. There were no path of push down ag to follow. I give it to you as it is. All right, second case. A classification I've never talked about before. Man's name was Eddie Earl Williams, 22 years old. Went missing July 25th, 1979. And he went missing near Anderson Dry Lake, east of Victorville, California. Remember the other day we talked about another case just south of Victorville? Well, now this case east of Victorville, still in the same cluster. Eddie lived with his family in Cypress, California, a Southern California location. Now, I told you before, Victorville's a strange place. Here's Victorville. This is an area where we've had other disappearances of the physicist I talked to you about down in here, Lake Arrowhead area. This is the Lucerne Valley. This incident happened just kind of northeast of the Lucerne Valley. And there's a little dry lake right there. And I'll explain that to you in a second. The classification is a missing dirt biker. When I was young, I used to love to ride dirt bikes. It's fun. It's a lot safer than riding a motorcycle on the street, let me tell you. And if people question me about that, don't even try. I took too many fatal accidents of motorcyclists on streets where people pulled out in front of them. You're out riding a motorcycle out in the desert, there's no motorcyclist or truck that's gonna pull out in front of you, okay? So, Eddie Earl Williams, July 25th, 79. He loved riding dirt bikes on trails and in the desert. He owned a yellow 250cc Suzuki outfitted for the dirt. And he had a bunch of buddies, and they all loved to ride dirt bikes. So they all met on July 24th, and the total of 4 friends established a camp at the base of a mountain near Anderson Dry Lake. Now, what's Anderson Dry Lake? Just like it says, it's a dry lake bed, pretty smooth bottom, in the middle of the desert. And in the desert, there's trails, but nobody pays attention to them really. There's roads, but if you're on a dirt bike, you really don't pay attention to them. You can kind of go anywhere, do anything, freewheel, whatever. Now, this was federal land that motorcyclists could ride on. No big deal. And there were dirt bikes there probably every day of the year. Well, on July 25th, the day after they arrived, the group left camp together to ride in the desert. Now, as it approached noon, the temps rose up to 105 degrees, blistering. Now, if this was me, first of all, I hate getting up early in the morning. And hate's a strong word, I know, but I do hate it. And if it was me, I'd be riding at night. And I know some people would say, oh, that's so stupid. No, I'd put super bright lights on my bike and I'd ride at night. But that's just me. Eddie was last seen wearing a black helmet, a blue shirt, blue jeans, and black cycle boots. Cycle boots come up to like near your knees. They're real rugged. And the group headed off. Well, on motorcycles, you have a limited supply of gas, right? So they all planned to head back at noon, refuel, have lunch, and then head back later. Well, as the group was heading back to camp, they were about 3 miles out, and they all looked around. There's 4 of us here. Okay, let's go. And they took off. They get back to camp, and he's gone. Nobody saw him peel off. He wouldn't do that, they didn't think. And he didn't know anybody else out there. And he had no way to get home because the motorcycle wouldn't have made it because it only had a small amount of fuel, which is why they were going back to camp. So they were all really puzzled. And they got back to camp. They ate lunch. He still hadn't showed up. They still weren't real concerned. But by 2 o'clock, they started to get concerned. And what they decided to do was all go back out into the area where they last saw him and see what they could find. Well, what they found was they thought they found one of his tracks peeling off. And they went with it, and there's all kinds of tracks all through the desert. But it quickly got obliterated because there was a wind. So they searched throughout the day. Couldn't find him. Now, this is a good group of guys because they didn't give up. They searched through the hottest part of the day, which wouldn't have been fun. And at 6 o'clock, they called the San Bernardino County Sheriff. Well, he eventually arrives at camp, and they explain the situation. And they said that Eddie was a good rider. And they thought at the most he had an hour's worth of fuel, but no more. He also carried tools with him. So, and he was a good mechanic. And if something was wrong with his bike, he would have fixed it and been back. Well, the sheriff knew that this area was filled with motorcycle riders. And so right away, I could just know it by the tone of the questions. He was sure that Eddie was going to be found, as I would have been as well. So at 7 o'clock, the deputy makes a call out for the following day for a full search and rescue. Now, deputies in most departments don't have this authority. This is a big deal. You're going to call out possibly hundreds of people, and you better have a plan. Where it happened, when it happened, experience level, energy level, athleticism, how much fuel, how hot is it, how long could he survive in that environment with no water, and he didn't have any water, he didn't have any food. You're not going to last long out there. So July 26th, the following day, the Bureau of Land Management sent out a helicopter to search. And that probably would be his greatest advantage of looking down and seeing something on the desert just stands out. Well, they also called in 29 Palms Rescue, Yucca Valley Search and Rescue, San Bernardino Sheriff's Office Posse, Barstow Search and Rescue, Morongo Basin Posse. A lot of people came. A lot. And all came on motorbikes, which is a smart thing to do. And they divided the desert and they took quadrants from the area he was last seen. Now this is a different kind of one. Because how far out do you push the search and rescue? Because the more time he's out there, the less of a chance he has of living, because it's so blazing hot. Well, they know at the maximum he had an hour's worth of fuel, 50 miles an hour. You could be 50 miles out in the desert in an hour. But they didn't think that's what happened. So they put the parameters up. They never made those known, and they started to search. And what they found was fascinating to me. So July 27th, same thing, same group, same event. Well, that day, they pushed out a little farther and they started to search canyons, small canyons of the mountains in there, drive up washes and things. They said they found 2 abandoned motorcycles way out in the middle of nowhere, different locations. And they said that the motorcycles were 100% operational, in great condition, with one problem. What would that be? They ran out of fuel. Yeah, they ran out of fuel. So people just leave the bikes there and walk out. And I guess they just either forgot where they were, or they didn't get them because the sheriff's office didn't have any missing people from there. They also found something else. They also found several motorcycle riders' clothes and boots scattered at different locations in the desert. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading that and I'm thinking, they didn't have any missing people? Because it sure sounds like that would fit. Now let's back up 2 paces. Let's say you're a young motorcycle rider. You like going to the desert. You like riding and nobody could go. You don't go and go riding out there in the desert without anybody knowing that you're there. That would be a crime in my mind. It's not really a crime, but that would be a crime. You don't do that. You tell your parents, you tell friends, hey, I'll send you a text at such and such a time. If you don't get a text with me, you call search and rescue. Or you carry a personal locator beacon. And why is that? A lot of things can happen in the desert. What happens if you're way out there and you don't get a flat? You blow a tire. No, you're not fixing that. No, you're not. And it's 105 degrees. You may not walk out of there alive. Number 1. Number 2, what if you get a leak and you run out of fuel and you didn't realize your tank had a leak? Or you're way out there and you blow your engine. Right? Can happen. So, but Eddie had his friends and he had search and rescue looking and everybody was out looking. Search and rescue kept pushing the parameters out further and further. But they knew that he was low on fuel. Well, there was an 8-day search and rescue. And I got to admit, that's a pretty good one for 1979, especially for a motorcyclist. But they knew at 22 years old, Eddie Earl Williams was probably in the best condition of his life. And they said he was in good shape. Well, after 8 days, they terminate the search and rescue. And the family was involved. They said he never returned home. They never got a call. There was really no logical answer to explain what happened to him. Well, the sheriff, at the end of this, came up with something I don't know. Remember that old saying I gave you a long time ago? Local reports for local consumption. This is what the sheriff told the press about why they couldn't find him. They said he probably drove into a mine shaft that opened up and swallowed him. That's what he said. Now, I know that there's not a lot of investigative reporters out there these days that are going to ask the tough questions of anybody. And I'm always amazed how stupid the questions are that the press asks some people. But I can guarantee I would have asked, you know that helicopter that the BLM had? It's flying over, and if the ground would have opened up, you think that might have been an area they would have searched? What's he going to say? Oh, they didn't find any holes. Well, then how could he drive into a mine shaft and disappear? He was with his group. They're all going back to have lunch. A 22-year-old gets hungry at noon. He's with his buddies. What happened? Especially since nobody saw him peel off. Got it? This is the only time I've ever heard of a dirt biker in the desert disappearing. I've actually written about ATV riders who disappeared. Motorcycle riders, that's a whole different animal. And they never found Eddie. And they never found his motorcycle. Which is, I can't get over that. So, anyhow, the 2 cases for today. Eddie Earl Williams, 22 years old, July 25th, 79. And son of J.A. Pereira, May 19th, 1902. Thank you so much for being here and staying in tune with what's going on and making competent comments. And please Please, you guys that make comments, read the comments. You guys are smart. The entire village could learn a lot by everyone else's comments. And I know most of you are not reading the comments because you asked the same question 20 times. All right? So read them. Anyhow, this is the kindness revolution. It costs you nothing to be kind. Smile and help somebody in a time of need. And you know what? We're at that time in the world, there's a lot of need. Everyone's a little jittery, a little edgy. Thanks for being here. And I'll give you one last look at Huck. And I think from her response, she's not real riveted in my presentation. Paulides out.